What is good, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to some more World of Tanks, and most importantly, welcome back to the Mercenaries tech tree. Now guys, update 4.6 goes live today on the 28th of August 2018. When you are watching this video, the update will either be being pushed out at present or will have already gone live, depending on when I put this video out. But regardless, we are going to be covering the new additions to the Mercenary tech tree in this video, and there are a few, and we're going to come back to this incredibly dangerous looking machine at some point in this video, because I'm going to follow the same format as I did in my last video, which was when I went over the entire Mercenaries tech tree in general, and I started out with the lower tier vehicles, working our way up to the higher tier vehicles. So let's go over every single addition to the Mercenaries tech tree in update 4.6. I am incredibly hyped to see these vehicles in actions. This one specifically, for reasons that you'll discover later. But guys, let's take a look at the low tier vehicles to start with. So starting off with the tier 3 light tank, which has been named Thresher. Looks pretty cool. Looks like a derpy low tier vehicle, kind of like a duck almost. Almost like the AMX-40, but just a slightly different design. Which is, I mean, it looks like the AMX-38 hull, and I believe it is. So if we move into the packages of the Thresher, we should be able to find out. So what has this tank combined together to make it? What has created this tank, I should say. Let's take a look at that now. So, take a look at the packages, and we have the 47mm KWK TL43 gun, the Maybach HL120 TRM V12 engine, and as suspected, we are on the hull of an AMX-38. So this is a combination of French, German, and I think that's it. Just French and German machinery. I thought it was going to be something else, but the turret is German, the gun is German, the engine is German, and the hull is French. I'm not sure on the origins of the radio, but it doesn't really matter too much. So, looking at the details of this tank, we have a 300 horsepower engine in the form of the Maybach HL120 TRM V12. That is a lot of words to fit into one sentence. And we have a 47mm gun, the 4.7cm KWK TL43, which has a base rate of fire of 23.08 rounds per minute, an aiming time of 1.7 seconds, and base accuracy is 0.38. The base penetration values are as follows. So the AP ammunition has 62mm of penetration, APCR clocks in at 115, and high explosive is 24. The damage are as follows as well. So AP standard damage is 60. The APCR average damage is 60 as well, and the high explosive average damage is 75. So it's a very small caliber gun. You're not really going to see a massive increase on average damage when you fire HE out of this thing, but you're not going to be firing HE out of a 47mm gun. I mean, at least I wouldn't recommend it. And, I mean, it's only a tier 3, so you shouldn't really be slinging HE at any point anyway. The base traverse speed of the hull is 35 degrees per second. We have a turret traverse speed of 42 degrees a second, and we have a base view range of 320 meters with a base signal range of 415. So, not bad whatsoever. I don't particularly see this thing outshining anything at tier 3, especially with tanks like the 1MTLS in the game. I don't think it's going to make too much of a difference. I love the fact that they've put 06 on the side, much like they did in the Tusk, because it almost feels like they're appealing to me and my lucky number. But it's a funny, cool, you know, unique looking tier 3, and you guys may enjoy it, but nothing too special, I would imagine. I don't think the mobility would be too good because the AMX-38 is quite slow, but the gun's definitely going to pack a punch. German guns tend to be pretty decent, and it does have ridiculous APCR penetration for a tier 3, so not too much to say about it, to be honest, but it looks cool, it looks derpy, it looks like unique for a tier 3, so if this is something that you guys are looking for at tier 3, then go ahead and pick one up. Moving on to the tier 4, which is the bucket. I'm just going to make sure that we don't have... No, yep, cool. So we're going to cover the bucket, and then we will move on to the tier 4 tank destroyer. Look at this thing, man. Look at those giant road wheels, like, strapped to the side of this thing, acting as spaced armor. I'm pretty sure that is going to be functional spaced armor as well. If I have a look in the armor viewer, we'll do that shortly. But this looks as if it's a... It looks as if that is a Lux chassis, or no, that's the chassis of a Leopard, I do believe, the tier 5 German light tank, and that is the turret from an M3 or M5A1 Stuart, and that is the gun from the, is it the Covenanter? That's the 40mm Bofors. Anyway, that is an anti-aircraft gun, not auto loading. But it's an auto cannon, so you can fire. If you guys go way back to one of my Tech Request series episodes, you will find this gun on, I believe it is the Cruiser 4, I think. I'm going to have to double check that, guys. But regardless, that's a 40mm Bofors gun, auto cannon, and that's going to be very interesting to see indeed. Very interesting to see. Let's take a look at what actually this tank has to offer. So I want to double check quickly if that spaced armor is functional. I would imagine that it is. It looks as if... Okay, maybe not. Maybe that is just aesthetic. It doesn't seem to be included in the armor viewer. So... Oh, wait. No, 1 to 21. Yeah, you can see it highlighted here, so it's all purple. Well, it's all kind of lilac. So that is indeed going to act as spaced armor, which isn't really going to make a huge difference at tier 4, because most things don't really fire heat or anything like that anyway down at this tier. But could come in handy. It could come in handy, especially if someone's trying to sling HE at your side. The spaced armor is just going to eat the HE round, and it's not going to penetrate the hull or go through or do anything. It's just going to hit the spaced armor and explode. But regardless, taking a look at the packages of this tank, let's see how this thing is actually set up and what we can expect from it. So, we do indeed have the turret from the M3A3 Stuart. We have the quick-firing 40mm Mark 6 Bofors autocannon, the Continental R975C1 engine, and we are indeed right, or we were right, when we said that this is the hull of a Lux. It looked kind of similar to the Leopard, but it is indeed the Lux. So we have the combination of American, German, and British machinery right here. And let's actually take a look at the... Sorry guys, let me just click into... Not that. Let me click into the details. So we have an engine horsepower of 350. We have a rate of fire on the 40mm Bofors of 33.8 rounds per minute. Aiming time is 1.90, and we have a base accuracy value of 0.39. Penetration on the AP rounds are 63mm, or average penetration I should say. Average penetration on the APCR rounds is 101mm, and the average penetration on the high explosive rounds is 23mm. Average damage for AP and APCR is 50, and average damage for the high explosive rounds is clocked up a little bit at 60. The base traverse speed is 30 degrees a second on the tracks, so kind of slow considering that this is a, or considered to be a light tank, but I suppose the Lux is quite big, not quite heavy, but considered to be heavy for a light tank. when you compare it to some others. The turret traverse speed is 48 degrees a second, which is actually very nice. And the base view range is 330 meters with a signal range of 615 millimeters. Or, not millimeters. Meters, guys. Let me English correctly. 615 meters on the 12LL signal range, or 12LL radio. And that's that. So it looks pretty cool. I like the spent ammunition that's like strapped to the side of the turret. I think that acts as spaced armor as well. Looks pretty damn nifty, and having the autocannon on this thing could be pretty cool. Like, that thing is very dangerous within the right situation. You've only got to go to my Tank Request series episode to go and check that out, guys. I actually used full high explosive in it as well, and it had devastating effects. Although, I think I was at tier 3, so you're not really going to be able to do that in this thing because this is a tier 4. But nonetheless, it's going to be a fun, unique little tank to play. I imagine it will be pretty damn maneuverable, being that it is a Lux, and having that autocannon is going to be awesome. But moving on to the tier 4 tank destroyer, which is the Roundabout. Okay. This thing looks very unique indeed. That is a very big gun for a tier 4. Or very long gun, so I'd expect this to have quite decent shell velocity. Again, it looks as if it is the hull of the Lux. That is definitely the turret from an M8A1. And I'm not sure what gun this is. I honestly don't know. I'm trying to work it out based on the muzzle brake, but I guess we will just have a look and find out. So let's take a look at what this thing actually sports. So we have, indeed, the turret from an M8A1. This is an 85mm gun, the 85mm LB2S. We also have the Continental R675 engine. And once again, this is the Lux chassis and the Fug 12 radio, which is a tier 9 radio. That's pretty damn impressive on a tier 4. We also have a tier 6 gun on a tier 4. That's like, man, this could be very dangerous. Very, very dangerous. I'm going to need to find out exactly what the gun does. That's very impressive, man. But going over the stats of everything, so we have an engine horsepower of 265, so not quite as good as the other. Which was it? What was the name of it again? Guys, these are all new. Bucket. Okay, not quite as good as the Bucket. That's what I was looking for. Not quite as good as the Bucket, clocking in at 265 horsepower. We have a rate of fire on this 85mm gun of 10.71 rounds per minute. Aiming time clocks in at 2.5 seconds, and we have a base accuracy of 0.4. Most likely to balance this thing out, because an 85mm gun on a tier 4 is very, very good. That's a very high caliber on such a small tier. I don't think anything else in this game, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, I don't think anything else at tier 4 has a gun that big. I don't think it does. I don't think it does. But feel free to prove me wrong in the comments section, guys. We have a base standard penetration value on the armor piercing rounds of 130mm of armor. The APCR base penetration is 170mm, and the base penetration on the high explosive rounds is 44mm of penetration. Average damage is 160 for both AP and APCR, and because the large caliber of the 85mm gun, it actually increases, or the high explosive damage increases to 280. So you double your damage if you get a high explosive penetration, which with 44mm of penetration shouldn't be too difficult at tier 4. I'm trying to think of tanks that you could actually penetrate with high explosive rounds. High explosive rounds may be a genuine tactic in this tank, to load a few of them. Because if you get the side and rear of your enemies in this thing, you could chew them up with 280 alpha damage. You really could. But I guess we're just going to have to see how it plays. But I mean, that's very tempting. I think if I got this thing, I would load like 5 high explosive rounds and just test them out in a battle. And then go from there. But I feel like that could be a genuine tactic in this thing based on the large caliber of the gun based on this tank's tier. Now we have a traverse speed of 32 degrees a second on the hull. And we have a very, very slow traverse speed of 14 degrees a second on the turret. Most likely because that poor little MAA-1 turret is weighed down quite heavily by the 85mm gun, and of course it is to balance it out. You don't want this thing to be able to traverse like a medium tank, otherwise it would be pretty OP. And we have a base signal range of 710, and if I didn't mention it already, we have a view range of 320 meters. So pretty interesting all round. I feel like this thing could be a very, very good tier 4. Like, you guys know what the T67 is like? And if you don't, you should. That thing is ridiculous. Like, the T67 is arguably one of the most OP tanks in the game. This thing could. I'm not saying it will, but just based off of first impressions, this thing could actually rival it, I think. The 85mm gun on a tier 4 with very decent mobility and view range. This could run the show, man. It really could. I really want to test it out and see how it actually performs. But nonetheless, we are going to have to move on to the next tank, which is the tier 5 heavy tank, the Deadbolt. And I'm really wondering what turret this tank has. But this is definitely the chassis of a BDR, so the French tier 5 heavy tank, the BDR. And I really can't work out what turret that is, but that looks like a Japanese cannon. Looks like a Japanese cannon. We're going to have to delve into the specifics and find out. So guys, let's do that now. Let's take a look at the packages and see what this thing is sporting. So, we have the turret of the Swedish STRV M42. We have a 7.5 centimeter tank gun type 5, so that's the 75mm Japanese type 5 cannon. We have the engine of a Renault, well, it's not actually a Renault T14, but the engine is the Renault T14 engine, and as suspected, this is the hull of a BDR G1B BIS with the RA400 radio, which is a tier 9 radio. Pretty damn good as well. Let's actually have a look and see how this thing is going to perform. So back into packages, details. Engine horsepower is 450. Now the BDR is, or the BDR is not the quickest tank in the box because obviously it is a heavy tank. So don't expect performance to be all that good. It is going to be, I imagine it will play similarly to the BDR's mobility, or it will have similar mobility to the BDR. So if you guys know what that's like, then that is most likely what you can expect from this tank. We have a base rate of fire of 16.22 rounds per minute on the 75mm Type 5 tank gun. Base aim time is 2.3 seconds with an accuracy, or base accuracy, of 0.39. So not the best accuracy in the world for a 75mm. Most 75mm in the game, to my knowledge, perform better than that. So that's not too good. 0.39 accuracy is not reliable accuracy whatsoever. The penetration values, however, are pretty decent. We have 124mm of penetration with the AP rounds, 155mm of penetration with the APCR rounds, and 38mm of penetration with the high explosive rounds. Average damage clocks in at 125 for AP and APCR, and slightly increased to 175 on the high explosive rounds. Traverse speed very slow on the hull, 20 degrees a second, but it is the hull of the BDR. So like I said, it doesn't traverse that fast, doesn't move that fast either. The turret traverse speed is 24 degrees a second, and it has a respectable view range of 350 meters with a very nice signal range of 710 meters. So I don't really know how this thing is going to play. It looks very odd. This is not one of the most aesthetically English. This is not one of the most aesthetically pleasing mercenary tanks. In my opinion, you guys might love it, but it's definitely not one of the most aesthetically pleasing mercenary tanks. It looks, I mean, this looks very chopped up and very slapped together, but I suppose that is the whole point of these mercenary tanks. They are tanks that have been slapped together, and, you know, they're tanks that don't particularly look as if they were made for production. That's the whole point. So I suppose this is very fitting to what a mercenary tank should look like. At least in Wargaming's opinion, anyway. But moving on once again, we have the Tier 6 Stinger, which is a new light tank edition. And just based off of what I can see, I'm going to guess that this is the hull of an AMX 1375. The turret from, that looks like the STA-1, but I can't be sure. It does look very, very similar, and I think that is the... If that's a 90mm cannon, I will be very surprised. I think that's a 75mm cannon, but we will have a look and see. But this is actually a very nice looking light tank. It's very aesthetically pleasing. In comparison to the Deadbolt that we just saw, this thing's very nice looking. So let's take a look at the specifics, and we will see what this tank comprises of. So this is the M24 turret. So that's the turret from the M24 chassis. We have a 76mm gun, or the T94 76mm gun. We also have the Renault T12 engine, which Deadbolt shares, and indeed it is the AMX 13 chassis. So I think that's the AMX 1375 chassis that we're looking at. And we have a tier 10 radio, which is very nice for a light tank. Being able to broadcast the enemy tank's positions to your teammates is very important. Now let's take a look at the specifics of these packages to see how this tank is going to perform. So an engine horsepower of 350, although I can't imagine that this tank would weigh very much, being that it is the hull of an AMX 13 and the turret from the M24. It's not going to weigh that much, so I expect it to be very, well, maybe not very maneuverable, but you would expect a light tank to be pretty damn maneuverable. Now, the base rate of fire on the 76mm T94 gun is 14.29 rounds per minute. We have a very nice aiming time of 1.9 seconds, but a very lackluster accuracy, which clocks in at 0.4. Penetration values, pretty average, just, you know, kind of what you would expect from a 76mm gun. The standard, or the average penetration on the AP rounds is 120. And we have 160mm of average penetration on the APCR rounds, and an average penetration of 38mm of armor on the high explosive rounds. Yeah, let's just add an SH onto everything that I say. Average damage, guys. Average damage is 115 on the AP rounds, 115 on the APCR rounds, and 185 on the high explosive rounds. Traverse speed, very nice indeed. 44 degrees a second on the hull, and a very nice 44 degrees a second on the turret as well. We have a nice view range of 370 meters, and signal range clocks in at 750 because you have a tier 10 radio, which is very nice. Very, very nice indeed. Very nice. Stinger, you're looking at a new Mercenary light tank edition. This is Not the only Mercenary light tank, but it is the only one at tier 6, I do believe. I don't think there's any others. Let me just double check that quickly. I don't think there is, but I can't seem to switch to the... Okay, there we go. So, tier 6. Yeah, the only tier 6 light tank. The only tier 6 light tank in the Mercenary tech tree. Moving on to... Well, not the only tier... Yeah, the only tier 6. Sorry, guys, I should say. I'm getting confused. But moving on to the next tier 6, which is this heavy tank right here. The tier 6 Mercenary heavy tank named Reach. Now, you guys will recognize this gun immediately if you have ever played the KV-85 or indeed the KV-1S before it was changed to a tier 5. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, you are looking at a 122mm gun on this tier 6 heavy tank, and that turret is so easily recognizable. That is the turret from a Churchill, and the hull is very easily recognizable as well. I think that is the hull of a VK36. So we have the combination of Ruski gun, British turret, and German hull. Now let's actually take a look into that further to see. So indeed, we have the turret from the Churchill 7. We have the 122mm D25T cannon, which is taken from the KV-85, or you can equip it on the KV-85, and you used to be able to have it on the KV-1S as well before it was moved to tier 5. And indeed, ladies and gents, we have the hull of a VK36. The engine is the V5U, and the radio is the SCR 538, which is a tier 7 engine. So taking a look at the details, we have an engine horsepower of 580. Rate of fire is unbelievably not that good. As you would expect from an 122mm gun, this thing does not fire that often whatsoever. We have a base rate of fire of 3.75 rounds per minute. A god-awful aiming time of 3.6 seconds, and unbelievably bad accuracy at 0.48, which is pretty terrible. But it is a very powerful gun. If you are in brawling situations with this thing, the aim time and the accuracy aren't really going to matter. You definitely want to play this tank right at the front line to make the most of that 122mm cannon, because you have very good penetration. The average penetration on the AP rounds is 175. The average penetration on APCR rounds is 217, and the average penetration on the high explosive rounds is 61. Now, average damage clocks in at 390 for AP and APCR, and 530 for high explosive. Now, if you guys have played any Ruski tank, then you'll know what to expect from this cannon. Especially if you've played the KV-85 with the 122mm equipped, you will know what to expect from this cannon. You are going to have to play this thing up close and personal to make it work. That's all I'm going to say. We have a traverse speed on the hull of 22 degrees a second. The turret armor is actually very decent. 152mm on the front with 95 on the side and rear. That is much better than the turret armor that you get in a KV-85, which can also equip this gun. If you angle that correctly, that is going to be very hard to penetrate within your own tier. That is one of the perks of having the Churchill 7 turret. And the traverse speed is 24 degrees a second with a view range of 370 meters. So not bad, not bad. And the signal range isn't that great though, only 480 meters, which again suggests that you should be moving up to the front, because you don't want to be the person in the back not able to spot the targets that your tanks have spotted in front of you, and then not able to hit them because your aim time is 3.6 seconds and your accuracy is 0.48, which is terrible from range. You're not gonna be able to hit much from range. And if you do, you're a very lucky person. You are a very lucky person. But this is gonna bring an interesting dynamic to tier 6. It really is. Really, really is. That tough turret with this 122mm gun. I wonder how much the gun actually can depress on this tank, because the Churchill turret is not as big as the KVA-5. So I wonder what the gun depression is on this thing. It's probably not that great. If we have a little look, we should be able to go into the modules quickly. I just want to confirm, guys. We have a gun depression, yeah, 3 degrees. 3 degrees of gun depression. Absolutely awful. But you do have a good elevation which clocks in at 20 degrees. So that's not too bad. Not too bad at all. But that is definitely going to bring an interesting dynamic to tier 6. And slapping people with this 122mm gun is going to be fantastic. It's going to be fantastic. If it actually hits. I bid you good luck if you are actually trying to hit something with the reach. But moving on to what is the tier 9. And this thing is called the Sharpshooter. Naturally, because look at that turret, boys. Look at that turret. What do you recognize that from? Is that turret not the most seen turret on this channel? Yes, it is, guys. That is the turret from a Chieftain Mark 6 on a tier 9 vehicle, with the hull of the T95E2. Now, I seem to remember a post or pictures that I saw online of this tank being rumored to be introduced on PC. Not in this particular format, but I definitely remember seeing pictures of a T95E2 hull with the Chieftain Mark 6 turret on top. Except it had the 120mm gun, which the Chieftain actually sports. And interestingly, this actually looks as if it may have a gun mantlet now as well, underneath that cover. So that might be an interesting development as well, because you can penetrate the Chieftain in this spot here, just above the gun, on the regular Chieftain, and I don't think you're going to be able to do that on this tank. Because if it has a gun mantlet, the gun mantlet's just going to eat it up and bounce the shell off. But this is a very, very cool looking tank, guys. Very, very cool. I mean, you guys know I have Chieftain bias, so this looks great. This looks great, and I want to find out exactly what gun this tank is sporting. So let's take a look at the packages and we will find out. So, as confirmed, this is the Chieftain Mark 6 turret. Very, very strong. Very strong. Very strong on a tier 9 tank. We have the 105mm KWK L52 Alfs B gun. So, if I am correct here, which I think I am, that is the gun, that is the 105mm gun from the Tiger II. Isn't it? The Tiger II 105mm cannon, the L52. That's definitely that gun. 100%. We have the GMC Allison V1710 E32 engine. Again, lots of words to shove into one sentence. The hull is indeed the T95E2, so don't expect too much from the hull. But we do have the AN GRC 8 Tier 10 radio, so signal range will probably be decent. But saying that, I say not to expect too much from the hull. But look at that sloping on the upper glacis. That's very similar to what the Chieftain actually has as well. I don't think your upper glacis will get penetrated. That angle is just ridiculous. Unless, of course, you're facing ridiculously good tier 10 tank destroyers and such. But this thing can most definitely effectively hold down. And especially if it gets 10 degrees of gun depression, like the Chieftain does get. That's actually, let's see. Let's see. It does indeed. 20 degrees of gun elevation and 10 degrees of gun depression. And look, you can see the mantlet there, which is hidden behind the shroud. Hidden behind the gun shroud. So that's going to be interesting. You used to be able to penetrate the Chieftain right above the gun, but you might not be able to do that on this tank. you might not be able to do that. But let's take a look at the statistics of these modules in detail. So we have a engine horsepower of 760. Rate of fire clocks in at 5.83 rounds per minute. Aiming time, not that great. I mean, it's not bad. 2.7 seconds isn't terrible, but not what you would expect from a Chieftain turret. But obviously the Chieftain gets a exceptionally good aiming time, so you have to balance this tank somehow. 2.7 seconds, like I said, is not terrible, but it's not fantastic. I would have expected this to be sitting at around 2.5-ish, given that it is a German cannon. But you do have a very, very good accuracy of 0.3. And if you put vents on this thing, if you train brothers in arms on this thing, and if you equip a premium consumable such as a case of cola or tea and pudding, something like that, I'm pretty sure you would bring the accuracy down. If you combine all of that, you would bring the accuracy down to 0.27, which is crazy good accuracy. We have very, very nice penetration on this 105mm cannon as well. The base penetration on the AP rounds is 220. Base penetration, or average penetration I should say, for both, 270mm on the APCR rounds and 60mm on the high explosive rounds. Damage is very nice as well. 390. That's the same damage as a 122mm cannon. I don't know if this is actually going to be how it is when it's introduced, because I'm recording this pre-patch. But I did not expect the average damage to be 390 on a 105mm cannon. I really didn't. Although I suppose that's right, because the Chieftain, not the Chieftain, sorry, the Centurion Mark 10 gets that average damage. So, yep, very nice average damage indeed, clocking in at 390 for both AP and APCR. And we have an average damage of 510 on the high explosive rounds. Now, the hull has a base traverse speed of 30 degrees a second. The turret armor is going to be very nice, very, very nice, as you would expect. 250 on the front, 140 on the sides, and 30mm on the rear. So if you guys have the Chieftain, you'll know exactly how this turret performs. And being that this tank shares the 10 degrees of gun depression, it's going to be a very good ridgeline tank. It's going to be a very, very good ridgeline medium. I think, to be honest, I think this will outshine the Centurion 7.1. I think it will. I think it will. We have a traverse speed on the turret of 30 degrees a second and a view range of 390. So literally nothing is different on this Chieftain Mark 6 turret to how it actually performs on the Chieftain. So it's exactly the same. And the signal range is 745 meters. So I am very, very excited to play this tank. Very excited. I think this is going to be a very good tier 9 medium when this gets introduced. Very, very good. And obviously I have Chieftain bias, and because it has the Chieftain turret and you can hold down with this thing, man, with that accuracy combined with the alpha and hold down ability, this thing won't really play any different to how a Chieftain plays. You just obviously won't have as good of a rate of fire, but you know, it has to be balanced somehow. It has to be. But moving on to the showpiece of this video, guys. Moving on to the tier 10. The second tier 10 in the Mercenary tech tree, other than the Tusk, which you guys should already be aware of, is called the Machine. And this thing is going to be a machine. I can assure you of that. Any guesses on what it might be? This is the hull of an AMX-50B combined with the Chieftain Mark 6 turret combined with the gun, and I should say the auto-loading gun from the TVP 5051. Is that not a ridiculously strong concept? The AMX 50B's hull is, you know, not the best in the game, but very decent frontally. The Chieftain Mark 6's turret is not the best turret in the game, but very decent frontally, and especially in hold down positions. Look at this gun mantlet as well. Like I was saying on the last tank, you can penetrate just above the gun in the Chieftain quite reliably on the regular Chieftain, but this mantlet gets in the way. This 100mm gun with its mantlet gets in the way of that weak spot, so you completely eradicate that weak spot by the look of things. Obviously, I don't know until we test it, but I'm just going off of what I can see and what I assume. But this is going to be... I honestly don't know what to expect. I feel like this will be one of the strongest tier 10. One of the... See, I can't... guys, I can't even comprehend myself right now. I can't even talk properly because I can't comprehend what I'm looking at. This is going to be, I think, one of the strongest tier 10 tanks in the game when it's introduced, when you've unlocked it. I really do. I really do. And I say that because you have an auto-loading 100mm gun from the TVP 5051. Let's actually take a look just to confirm it. So, Chieftain Mark 6 turret, 100mm AK-1 gun, the M50 Ti engine, and the hull of an AMX 50B. I'm not really too concerned about the radio. It doesn't really matter too much at tier 10. But again, we have a tier 10 radio. So, radio range will be what you expect it to be for a tier 10 radio. Looking at the details, we have an engine horsepower of 1,200. And I have taken this tank into a training room and clocked in at 55 kilometers an hour. This thing literally has the mobility of an AMX 50B, which is ridiculously good mobility. Ridiculously good mobility. It has a base rate of fire on the gun of 8 rounds per minute, because you can squeeze 2 reloads into a minute. Yes, it's the auto-loading gun from the TVP 5051. So 4 shots in the clip. 248 millimeters of average penetration on the AP rounds. Average penetration on the heat rounds clocks in at 310 millimeters, and high explosive average penetration is 50 millimeters. But don't even bother loading high explosive on this tank. You're not going to need it. Just stick to AP and heat. 320 average damage for both AP and heat. The aiming time is 2.2 seconds, which is very good. And you have an accuracy of 0.35, which, okay, isn't the best, but isn't horrible either. 0.35 is decent. I would say anything over 0.36 tends to be a bit on the side. But 0.35 is nice. And given that you're going to be, you know, up close and personal, 0.35 is fine. But you could also play this thing as a second line ridgeline tank with the Chieftain turret and the auto loader, and just pick away at people from a distance with your ridiculously good rate of fire and interclip reload. You have a traverse speed of 38 degrees a second on the AMX 50B hull. The Chieftain turret armor is exactly the same. The traverse speed is slightly increased from the tier 9 sharpshooter. The traverse speed is 32 degrees a second, as opposed to 30 degrees a second, which sharpshooter had. And the view range is exactly the same at 390 with a signal range of 750. I honestly feel like this thing is just going to be nuts. It has an under, or just around 20-second reload. So if you have Brothers in Arms combined with Vents, combined with tea and pudding, because naturally, you know, the Chieftain turret, you need tea and pudding in the Chieftain turret, you can bring the reload to a very respectable figure. Very respectable figure. And I tell you what, guys, I'm gonna release a training room video of this tank so you can see it perform. Obviously, we'll be firing against dummies. We'll be firing against AI. But just so you guys can see roughly how this thing is going to perform. Now, you can't equip a gun rammer because it is an auto-loading gun. So this also gives you options that you don't tend to have in the Chieftain. And this is what I would... This is my setup for the sharpshooter, right? So, vertical stabilizer, gun rammer, and optics. You know, standard medium setup for me, basically. Now, the machine, optics, vertical stabilizer, and vents. You can increase your crew performance even further by slipping vents in there. Now, obviously, you could decrease your aiming time as well if you put a gun laying drive in there. Gun laying drive. But I don't feel you'll have to. The aim time is 2.2 seconds. And the gun performance is very good on the TVP 5051, and that is just replicated here on the machine. But that's it. That's it for this video, guys. That is it for this video. I will release another video to show you guys roughly how this, or not roughly how it's going to perform, because obviously it's going to be different against real players. But just so that you can understand what this thing brings to the table, I'm going to record a video of how it performs in a training room so that you guys can get an idea of how it plays. But guys, thank you for tuning in to this video today. I hope you are as excited as I am to see these tanks introduced, particularly the machine and the sharpshooter for me. Stinger looks very interesting as well. I really like the look of this thing. But sharpshooter and the machine, I'm so hyped. I'm so hyped. I can't express that enough. But guys, that's going to be the end of the video. Whatever you're doing for the rest of the day, I hope you have a wicked day, evening, morning, whatever, you know, wherever you're watching, wherever you're tuning in. Have a fantastic day, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Until then, peace